Hotel family. Welcome back to another episode of Matthew Daniels TV, where we allow the ancestors to speak. I know you guys see the title. Today, we're going to be talking about a powerful conjurer named Dinkie who received power from the devil. That's right. A powerful conjurer named Dinkie who claimed himself to receive his powers of conjure from the devil. Now, I'm doing this video because of a comment that one of my supporters left on one of my videos. They asked if I could go into the works of the ancestor William Wells Brown and talk about the conjurer Dinkie. So, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I have mentioned Dinkie in a previous video, but I hit the high notes in the story. What we're going to do today, we're going to go to the actual text itself of our ancestors, and we're going to take a in-depth look into this conjurer named Dinkie. I remember, well, before I begin, let me get the screen share up. And once I make sure that the screen share is working, once I make sure that the volume is working, we're going to get right off into the information, if you guys don't mind. So let me just double check that. Okay, so the audio is good. Screen share is working. Okay, let's get into it. The first thing that I want to say is I recall growing up hearing about the enslavement of my ancestors, right? And how it was illegal for them to read and write. And so as a child, as a teenager, and even as a young adult, I never realized how many books our ancestors who were enslaved actually wrote. My primary source for what slavery was like, how it was on our ancestors, how our ancestors viewed slavery, what was their day-to-day life like on the plantation. My primary source for that was modern day historians and the enslavers themselves, because obviously their books, their writings, what they said was more readily available. And so I know that just like me, the majority of people don't understand how many writings of our ancestors that we actually have. And once you find that out and you start perusing the literature that our ancestors who were actually enslaved actually wrote, you start getting to what slavery was really like. So the information that we have about Dinkie, unfortunately, the conjurer Dinkie never wrote a book. We don't have any primary sources from him, but we have the story of Dinkie as told by one of our ancestors who was born enslaved, who escaped to freedom and became a prolific writer. Actually, he wrote many books. Now, the ancestor that I'm talking about who gives us this information about Dinkie is a man named William Wells Brown. Now, born enslaved, he was given the name William. He escaped in 1834, around 19 years of age, and he took on the name Wells Brown. So he's known in history as William Wells Brown. Now, William Wells Brown was born in around 1814, and he died November 6th, 1884. He escaped slavery in around 1834, okay? So pay attention. In 1849, Brown left the United States with his two young daughters to travel in the British Isles to lecture against slavery. He wanted them to gain the education he had been denied. He was also traveling that year as a representative of the U.S. at the International Peace Congress in Paris. Given passage of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 in the U.S., which increased penalties and more severely enforced capture of fugitive slaves, he chose to stay in England until 1858. Pause. What are they talking about here? Now, William Wells Brown escaped slavery in 1834. Okay. He was doing some work on a steamboat. The steamboat went to the state of Ohio. At the time, Ohio was a free state. Remember, there were states where slavery was illegal in America, while at the same time there were states where slavery was legal. And the majority of this was in the South, slavery was legal. In the North, slavery was illegal. This was an oversimplification. You really have to look at it state by state. But the first thing that you got to get, the easiest way to understand it is that as time progressed in America, slavery was abolished in the North and it was continued in the South. This led up to what we know as the Civil War. So William Wells Brown, as an enslaved individual, he was leased out, right, by his Southern master to work on steamboats. What a plantation owner would do is they would have contracts signed by people who needed work done. And they would say, okay, you need 5 people. I'm going to give you 5 of my slaves. You're going to pay me X amount of dollars for the work that these 5 slaves do. Those slaves would go work for the employer. The employer would pay the plantation owner. The slave would get nothing. Now, in some instances, the slave would actually be paid. Some of our ancestors had money, but this was the general way that slavery worked. So William Wells Brown, he worked on a steamboat. While working on a steamboat, the boat traveled to Ohio. Ohio was a free state. So while in this free state, boom, William Wells Brown, he runs away, he escapes, he mixes in with the free blacks. He's free. This is how he ends up getting his freedom. So about 15 years after escaping, he leaves the United States with his 2 young daughters, and he goes to travel through the British Isles. He goes to travel around Britain. And what he's doing is he's lecturing against slavery. A lot of our ancestors that escaped, they would use them to lecture against slavery and tell how horrible slavery was. Because by telling how horrible slavery was, they pulled on the heartstrings of good white people, and these good white people would in turn work to end slavery. Remember, slavery ended in Britain before it ended in the United States. We have to make that clear. Slavery ended in Britain, I believe it was like the 1800s or 1801. It was the early 1800s that Great Britain abolished slavery. So while a year after William Wells Brown was traveling in Britain to lecture, in America, they passed something that was called the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. What that was is so many of our ancestors were escaping along the Underground Railroad. So many of our ancestors were escaping like William Wells Brown did, that the Southern plantation owners began lobbying legislators to create laws to make it easier for them to go to free states, find the escaped slaves who are now living free in free states, and bring them back. So Brown, being an escaped individual, he was actually a fugitive from justice. So when they passed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, He decided not to come back to the Americas because at this point he had gained fame, he had gained notoriety. His name was known because he's going around Britain lecturing. His face is known, his name is known, his movements are known. So he feared that if he came back to America, a slave catcher enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act would capture him, take him back to the South, the plantation that he escaped from, and he would become re-enslaved. So he decided to stay in Britain and England until about 1854. And then some people in Britain, some good white people in Britain, decided to pay for his freedom. Now, William Wells Brown, after becoming emancipated, after he became free, Hotel Brooklyn Zoo, I see you, fam, I see you. He went on to write several different works. He was a prolific writer. We can see some of his works on the screen. He wrote the narrative of William Wells Brown, A Fugitive Slave, and it was written by himself. Now, his narrative account became a bestseller, and it was second only to the narrative account of Frederick Douglass. Remember, Frederick Douglass is probably one of the most, if not the most famous escaped slave, right? He escaped slavery and became this great individual who had conversations with presidents of the United States. The narrative, the autobiography that Frederick Douglass wrote became a bestseller. And I believe no other slave narrative has outsold the narrative of Frederick Douglass. Now, William Wells Brown comes in second. This is how important this guy is. Now, while he was in London, he wrote another narrative of William Wells Brown, an American slave, told his story again. He wrote a book called 3 Years in Europe, or Places I Have Seen and People I Have Met, discussing his travels in Europe and in Britain. Remember, I told you he traveled around Britain. He wrote another book called Clotel, or The President's Daughter. Now, this was a novel. This wasn't a real story. This was like a novel, and it was actually accredited. Clotel is actually accredited as being the first novel written by an African American, like a fictional tale. And we could see several more books that he read. Now, the one that we're going to look at is a book that he wrote in around 1880, or that's when it was published, called My Southern Home, or The South and Its People, where again he talks about where he was enslaved at, life on the plantation, the master that was over him, and the other individuals that was on the plantation with him. It's a book called My Southern Home. Now, in the book, My Southern Home is where we find the information about a conjurer named Dinkie. Now, Dinkie is someone that he knew personally. Okay, he knew Dinkie personally, seen him with his own eyes, spoke to him with his own mouth, listened to him with his own ears. So this is what we call a primary source, not a secondary source. This is a primary source. He knew Dinkie for himself. So this is whether or not you believe the story that he's going to tell, this is the best information that we can get on Dinkie outside of something written by Dinkie himself, which unfortunately does not exist. Right? So, real quick, the area that William Wells Brown was enslaved with the conjurer named Dinkie is known as Poplar Farm. Now, this is a contemporary drawing of Poplar Farm. This is the what they call the big house. Every plantation had a big house or a mansion or a really big house where the master and his family lived. And this big house sat on multiple acres of land. Now, on these multiple acres of land, there were shacks and cabins that were known as the slave quarters. The slave quarters is where our ancestors lived, like one-room shacks, beds made out of straw, fireplace in some of them to where they could cook. And this is why our ancestors lived out their lives on plantations. So you won't see a lot of drawings about the slave quarters when they're talking about a plantation. They're going to show you the main staple of the plantation. So this is what Popular Forum looks like. This is where Dinkie and William Wells Brown would have lived. Okay. And so we're going to look at a brief description of this place from the ancestor, and then we're going to get into the story about Dinkie. Look what he says. 10 miles north of the city of St. Louis in the state of Missouri, 40 years ago, on a pleasant plain sloping off toward a murmuring stream, stood a large frame house, 2 stories high. In front was a beautiful lake, and in the rear, an old orchard filled with apple, pear, peach, and plum trees, with boughs untrimmed, all bearing indifferent fruit. The mansion was surrounded with piazzas, covered with grapevines, clematis, and passion flowers. The pride of China mixed its oriental-looking foliage with the majestic magnolia, and the air was redolent with the fragrance of buds, peeping out of every nook and nodding upon you with the most unexpected welcome. The tasteful hand of art, which shows itself in the grounds of European and New England villas, was not seen there, but the lavish beauty and harmonious disorder of nature was permitted to take its own course and exhibited a want of taste so commonly witnessed in the sunny South. So he's describing the area where his plantation that he grew up on was at, and he's describing it rather in immaculate terms. Really, it had to have been a beautiful place to behold. Now, of course, it was horrific for the slaves themselves living in the slave quarters, but outside of that, the big house, the land that it sat on next to a beautiful lake, trees, fruits growing, grapevines, different types of plants, the architecture, a mix of European and China style frame house, 2-story high. It had to have been a beautiful property in Missouri. There's no doubt about that. And the owner of Poplar Farm was a man named Dr. Gaines. He was a doctor, and he wasn't as rich as you might think a doctor was, but he did have certain he did have money. Okay, he did have money, he did have resources, and he had a lot of slaves. So this is the setting. So what I want to do now, I want to get into what the ancestor actually says about Dinkie. We're going to look at this powerful conjurer named Dinkie, who himself says got his power from the devil. Now, don't panic. We're going to examine what that means, but let's just take a look and let's learn more about our ancestors. So the great ancestor William Wells Brown says, nearly every large plantation with any considerable number of Negroes had at least one who laid claim to be a fortune teller and who was regarded with more than the common respect by his fellow slaves. Right there, I want you to understand what he's telling you. Nearly every large plantation had someone who practiced hoodoo, someone who was a conjurer, someone who was a root worker, someone who claimed to be able to see the future, someone who claimed to have these special powers. Hoodoo was very prevalent on the plantation. Now, Christianity was also prevalent, but what we have to understand is, and even William Wells Brown describes this, a lot of our ancestors, they were forced to go to church because the slave master went to church. So when we see talk of Christianity, the majority of the time, it is literally forced upon the people. I mean, it's nowhere around that. It was forced upon them. I can show you source after source after source to what they say they had to go to church. They had to go to Christian church and hear the message. But when you look at the sermons, they were all centered around a slave that knoweth his master will and does it not will be beat with many stripes. Slaves, obey your masters. They heard these sermons every single Sunday. Okay. So on nearly every large plantation, there is someone like Dinkie. So we're going to look at the Dinkie of popular form. Look what he says. Dinkie, a full-blooded African, large in frame, coarse-featured, and claiming to be a descendant of a king in his native land, was the oracle on the popular form. Now, we don't know if Dinkie actually descended from a king in Africa. That's what he says. Let's take that with a grain of salt. But he's a full-blooded African. What does that mean? A lot of our ancestors were mixed because there was a lot of grape going on. William Wells Brown himself, his mother was a Negro. His father was the cousin of the man that owned him and his mother. So William Wells Brown's mother was owned by a man. That man's cousin came by the house several times, had sex with his mother, got his mother pregnant, this white man, and William Wells Brown was a mulatto. He was mixed. A lot of our ancestors were mixed. We just have to accept that. So when he says that Dinkie was a full-blooded African, he was not mixed. His father, his mother, his grandfather, his grandmother, they were full-blooded African, most likely brought directly from Africa within the past generation or two, and they had not been raped by the slave owner as of yet. Even me, myself, I can trace my lineage back to 1848. I can trace my lineage back to my ancestor who was actually enslaved in Alabama named Thomas Daniels. Still the same name that I have now, Matthew Daniels. Thomas Daniels, on the record, was a mulatto. One of his parents, 99.9999999% sure his father was a white man who raped a black woman and gave birth to him. Listen. He says, at the time of which I write, Dinkie was about 50 years of age and had lost an eye and was, to say the least, a very ugly looking man. No one in that section was considered so deeply immersed in voodooism, gooferism, and fortune telling as he. In a little bit, we're going to talk about what gooferism actually is. We're going to address that in a later slide, but I'm going to make that make sense. So although he had been many years in the Gaines family, no one could remember the time when Dinkie was called upon to perform manual labor. He was not sick, yet he never worked. No one interfered with him. If he felt like feeding the chickens, pigs, or cattle, he did so. Dinkie hunted, slept, was at the table at mealtime, roamed through the woods, went to the city, and returned when he pleased, with no one to object or to ask a question. Everybody treated him with respect. The whites throughout the neighborhood tipped their hats to the old one-eyed Negro, while the policemen or patrollers permitted him to pass without a challenge. The Negroes everywhere stood in mortal fear of Uncle Dinkie. The blacks who saw him every day were always thrown upon their good behavior when in his presence. So what are we seeing? As Dinkie was a slave of Dr. Gaines when William Wells Brown became a slave of Dr. Gaines, and he was considerably older than William Wells Brown. So William Wells Brown is saying as he grew up and he began to become aware and conscious of what was going on around him on the plantation, there was this guy named Dinkie. As far as he can remember, Dinkie was a slave, but he never did any work. He came and went as he pleased. The paddy rollers. Now, what is a paddy roller? Whenever our ancestors would be out on the road, going from one plantation to the next, going from the plantation to their place of work, going from the plantation to town to run an errand, they would be stopped by patty rollers. These patty rollers would demand to see their passes. They had to get a piece of paper saying who they was, who they were, the plantation that they belonged to, and what business that they have out on the road. They did this to kind of inhibit our ancestors' ability to flee, because obviously if you escaped and you were running away and trying to get the freedom, you have no papers. So if you had no papers, it was suspected that you were breaking the law, trying to escape, you were beat, and you were taken back to the plantation that you left. But he says that this guy, Dinkie, never had any papers. The policemen or the patty rollers, which are one and the same at this time, never stopped him. They never asked for his papers. He never did no work on the plantation. He came and went as he pleased. When the white people seen him, they tipped their hats. Now remember, tipping your hat is a sign of respect back in those days. If two men were walking and they tip, then you're not going to tip your hat to somebody that you don't respect. You're not going to tip your hat to a slave, first off. You're not going to tip your hat to a Negro, first off. So when he says that they tipped their hats to the old one-eyed Negro, he's saying that even the whites had a certain level of respect for quote-unquote Uncle Dinkie. And the Negroes everywhere had a mortal fear of him. Something that took place before William Wells Brown was born put Dinkie in this position that he was in. And remember, this is a primary account. He's telling you what he's seen. And this guy, Dinkie, we know is immersed in hoodoo. Let's go a little further and maybe, and it will, spoiler alert, but maybe we will get more context to it. Look what he says. I once asked a Negro why they appeared to be afraid of Dinkie. So William Wells Brown, he's growing up. He's like, hey, why is everybody afraid of Dinkie, the one-eyed Negro? Why is everybody afraid of him? Like, what is it about him? Why do the white people treat him like that? Why don't he have to work? Why doesn't he get whooped? Why don't they treat him like a slave? Right? What's going on with him? And he says he looked at me, shrugged his shoulders, smiled, shook his head, and said, I ain't afraid of the devil, but I ain't ready to go to him just yet. He then took a look around and behind as if he feared someone would hear what he was saying, and then continued, Dinkie's got the power, see? He knows things seen and unseen, and that's what makes him his own master. So when he asked the question about Dinkie, this is the response that he got. He's like, look, I'm not afraid of the devil, but I don't want to go meet him. Meaning that they believe that Dinkie could somehow take their life using hoodoo, conjure, gooferism. And we're going to explain that. Just hold on. Using these methods of conjure. Why did they believe this so strongly? And remember, not just the Negroes, but the whites as well. They say that he has the power. Now listen, in hoodoo, the idea is that there is a spirit realm, a spirit world where spiritual entities exist. Okay. Our ancestors, when you die, you go to this spirit realm. Now, in this spirit realm, much like on earth, there's good spirits and bad spirits, righteous spirits, unrighteous spirits. They liken it to fire and water. Okay, it's like a duality. Polar opposites exist in this spirit realm. Now, an individual conjurer or someone who practices hoodoo, not only can they connect to this spirit realm, but they can also connect to either the bad spirits or the good spirits. It's all about what they choose to conjure up. It's all about what spirit they choose to deal with. So when he says that Dinkie has the power. Dinkie has the power to interact with this spiritual realm. And he can make either good things or bad things happen depending on what he is trying to accomplish. You can do a spell that brings someone good luck. You can do a spell that brings someone bad luck. You can call down good spirits of protection over someone's life, or you can bring down evil spirits to torment and torture and bring bad luck on someone's life. So the hoodoo itself, conjure itself, is technically neither good nor bad. It's how the conjurer uses it. And when he says that he knows things seen and unseen, unseen is that spiritual world, and it's also the ability to peer beyond the veil and see both the future and the past. Remember, time is an illusion. There is no past, there is no future, there is only right now. Example, right now, right now, it is right now. If I wait 5 seconds, it's going to be right now. If I wait 10 minutes, and 10 minutes is going to be right now. It's not going to be the future, it's going to be right now. And think about it, a minute ago, 60 seconds ago, when I first said the term right now, we view that as the past, but when I said it, it was when? Right now. There's a concept of the eternal present. The only thing that exists is the present. It's all the present. There's no past, there's no future. And so if an individual they are able to, this is the concept, they are able to see beyond the veil. They can see the past, they can see the future, just as they see the present, the right now, because it's all the right now. If I can see right now, I can see right now. This is even alluded to in what we call physics. Albert Einstein, he changed the game with his theory of special relativity. Okay. And he said that what we know as space time is really a dimension like height, width, depth. Like we live in a 3-dimensional world. So we can go forward, backwards, up, down. I can look around. And the same way I can walk forward, I can walk back, I can walk to the left, I can walk to the right. The physics says, the laws of physics says, in a certain instance, an individual can move through time like you move through space. We're not going to get too deep into that, but that's the idea. And physics confirms this. But look what he says. It was literally true. This man, Dinkie, was his own master. So he said, this is literally true. So we don't know why. You don't have to believe in hoodoo. You don't have to believe in conjure, but 100% Dinkie was his own master. He was a slave. He did whatever he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. Nobody stopped him. Nobody black, nobody white, nobody challenged him. That's a fact. He wore a snake skin around his neck, carried a petrified frog in one pocket and a dried lizard in the other. A slave, now watch this story that he tells. A slave speculator once came along and offered to purchase Dinkie. Dr. Gaines, the plantation owner, Dr. Gaines, no doubt, thought it a good opportunity to get the elephant off his hands and accepted the money. A day later, the trader returned the old Negro with a threat of a suit at law for damages. So what are they telling us? At some point, someone who purchases slaves, they're part of the slave trade. They purchase slaves here, they sell them there, they try to turn a quick profit of a couple $100 or whatever. So he comes and he wants to buy Dinkie. So Dr. Gaines like, really, I can't do nothing with Dinkie anyway. He's afraid of Dinkie. Let's get that understood. He's afraid of him. So he's like, okay, give me the money. You can have Dinkie. The man leaves with Dinkie. He comes back a day later. gives Dinkie back and says, hey, I ought to sue you for damages. So what can we hypothesize or guess that he's talking about? Maybe Dinkie put some kind of hoodoo on him that brought him some type of bad luck. And he was like, hey, whoa, wait a minute. No. I don't want this guy. This guy's bad for business. I'm just going to take him back. And he said, I ought to really ought to sue you for selling me this dude because this dude can't be controlled. Okay. Now, how Dinkie did this, we left to speculate, but let's look at the story. One day, now he's going to tell us a story about when a new overseer came to the Dr. Gaines farm. And this new overseer is going to challenge Dinkie and try to whoop Dinkie with the lash. And we're going to look and see exactly what happened. And here we're going to get into Dinkie working with the devil. Now, before we do this, what is an overseer? An overseer is like a manager of a plantation. Most of the time, the plantation owner was not in control of the day-to-day working of his plantation. He paid someone, an overseer, to come, and the overseer was the one who went in the morning, got the slaves out of their cabins, took the slaves out to the field, told them, you do this, you do this, you do this. If they didn't do it, the overseer was the one to whip them. The overseer was the one to punish them. The overseer was the one to watch over them in the fields all day. He was the one holding the whip, and he was the one controlling. He was like the manager of the day-to-day operations of the plantation. Now, the overseer was what we can consider poor white trash in a lot of instances. Now, every white person was not a plantation owner. Every white person was not rich. When you look into the historical record, in a lot of instances, you had millions. Listen to me good. You had millions of white people, right? They lived almost as bad as the slaves on the plantation. The only thing is they didn't have people whipping them and telling them what to do. But the average white person's house was no better than the slave quarters. Their beds were no better than the beds in the slave quarters. Their clothes were no cleaner, no better than the clothes that the slaves wore. Their food, no better than the food that the slaves ate. Right? They were filthy, unkept, very, very poor. And the only thing that they had to make them feel better about themselves was at least they could say, at least I'm not a Negro. And if they encountered a Negro on the streets, they were automatically better than them because they were white. So a lot of times these overseers to be an overseer was a way that a poor white person could make it out of his destitute position. He could get a job. It's like, oh, I have nothing. I'm poor. I'm dirty. I'm stinky. I'm filthy. I can get this job as an overseer. I can work as an overseer. And if I'm extremely hard on these Negroes, and if I make them turn a profit for the plantation owner will pay me. They would collect money as an overseer, save up enough money to try to buy some slaves themselves, and they will try to get in the game. That's why I want y'all to think about something. When you watch slave movies, right? When you watch slave movies and think about the white people who are actually whipping the slaves, a lot of times they can't speak proper English. They're missing teeth. They look dirty and dingy. They got overalls on. Their shirts are untucked. They dirty. Like think about Django for a second. Anybody watch Django? Remember when Candy is coming back to Candyland and he has Jamie Foxx, Django, and the dentist with him. They're coming back to Candyland to discuss business. They want to buy a Mandingo, right? And as they're crossing through the acres and acres and acres of Candyland, they come across a group of white people with dogs that have a slave ran up a tree who tried to escape. Who was like, I can't fight no more, Mr. Candy. I can't fight no more, Mr. Candy. I want you to think about those white people, not Candy. He was short because he was the plantation owner. He was rich. Him and his sister was rich. Leonardo DiCaprio, not him. Think about those white people with the overalls on that actually was controlling the dogs with whips and shit. Those were the overseers. That's why you see one of them spit on the ground when they saw Django. He spit on the ground and wiped spit with his sleeve. His hair was his hair was stringy and unkempt and wet and sweaty, and he looked filthy. He looked filthy. The guy that sicked the dog on the guy in the tree. And think about it. Whenever you watch a slave movie, pay attention to the guy with the whip. Pay attention to the guy that has the slave hunting dog. Just pay attention to him. Look at him. And you're gonna be like, damn, he ain't got on no suit, he ain't got no hat. And if you ever seen his house, I bet you his house is gonna look like slave quarters. So a new overseer is coming to Popular Farm to work for Dr. Gaines. Now, this new overseer, obviously, he's going to see Dinkie and he's going to try to tame the wild beast. Now, let's see how this goes. Primary information. We believe William Wells Brown. Okay, we believe his story. Check this out. A new overseer was employed by Dr. Gaines to take charge of Poplar Farm. His name was Grove Cook, and he was widely known as a man of ability in managing plantations and in raising a large quantity of produce from a given number of hands. Cook was called a hard overseer. The Negroes dreaded his coming, and for weeks before his arrival, the overseer's name was on every slave's tongue. Cook came. He called the Negroes up, men and women, counted them, looked them over as a purchaser would a drove of cattle that he intended to buy. As he was about to dismiss them, he saw Dinkie come out of his cabin. The sharp eye of the overseer was at once on him. So Grove Cook is a mean man, quote unquote, hard overseer. He whips. Most of them they were. Most of them were, right? Most overseers were out of control. They were vicious. The overseer is 99% more vicious than the plantation owner. Mark my words on that. So he calls up all of the slaves on the plantation so he could see them, let them know, hey, it's a new sheriff in town, me, Grove Cook. He sees all of them. He counts all of the slaves, men, women, and children. And then when he's dismissing them, like, okay, I'm going to see y'all in the morning. I'm going to be your new overseer. He looks up. He see Dinkie coming out of his cabin. And he's thinking, wait a minute, man. I called all of the slaves out here so I could line them up, count them, so everybody can meet me. You didn't come out your cabin? First off, Dinkie disobeyed the very first order that Overseer Grove Cook gave. So what does Cook say? Let's look at the story. So who is that nigger? Inquired Cook. That is Dinkie, replied Dr. Gaines. What is his place? Continued the overseer. Oh, Dinkie is a gentleman at large, was the response. Let's stop right there. So the new overseer is like, who is that nigga right there that didn't come out when I told him to come out? That's coming out of his cabin, just waking up. He think he better than the rest of the slaves. Who the hell is that? And Dr. Gaines, he's like, oh man, that's Dinkie. And he like, man, what is his place? What does he do around here? And he tells him, oh, Dinkie is a gentleman at large. What does a gentleman at large mean? What is Dr. Gaines owns Dinkie, right? This is crazy, fam. Dr. Gaines owns Dinkie. He owns him. He is his slave like everybody else. But this is so telling. When Cook says, what is his place? Dr. Gaines says he's a gentleman at large. Let's examine what I want y'all to see what that means. Right? Now, at large, gentleman at large, that's an idiom. It's an idiom. It's a phrase that means something else. What does it mean? At large is an idiomatic phrase that means at liberty or free. Now, get Dinkie not free. He's not a free Negro. He's a slave. But at large is an idiomatic phrase that means at liberty or free. It can have a negative or positive connotation in that a criminal or escaped convict can be at large before he or she is apprehended. We've all heard that before. 5 people escape from prison. They can say the 5 prisoners are at large, meaning they are at free, they are liberty. They have, no one has control over them. They are able to do whatever they want to do. A positive connotation of at large is that an envoy can be an ambassador at large, which means that he or she can having free roaming commission. The phrase in both senses dates to the late 17th century. The expression has an etymological connection to the sailing term large, which means sailing freely with the wind with full large sails. So when the owner of Dinkie says, oh, Dinkie is a gentleman at large, he's saying, oh, Dinkie does whatever the hell he want to do. My slave does whatever the hell he want to do. So now we're getting out of the realm of just William Wells Brown. Now we have the plantation owner is saying, hey, man, look, Dinkie do whatever the hell he want to do, bro. And so the slave, the overseer says, have you any objection to his working? And Dr. Gaines says, none whatever. Like, I don't object to him working. But obviously, he just knows I can't make him work. So the overseer says, well, sir, said Cook, I'll put him to work tomorrow morning. Dinkie was called up and counted in. At the roll call, the following morning, all answered except the conjurer. He was not there. The overseer inquired for Dinkie and was informed that he was still asleep. So boom, the very first time the overseer gets there, Dinkie don't come out when he called him. So now the overseer is like, okay, I got my eye on you, bro. I'm gonna break you. I'm gonna break you. So the very next day, he called everybody up. Everybody showed up but Dinkie. Dinkie again, even with what happened yesterday, he's still sleeping. Like, bro, I'm not worried about you. I done been through this 100 times. I ain't worried about you. And so he was still asleep. The overseer say, hey, where the hell is Dinkie? Because now he know his name. Where the hell is Dinkie? All the other slaves, man, he's still asleep in the cabin. So he says, I will bring him out of his bed in a hurry, said Cook, as he started towards the Negro's cabin. So Cook was like, okay, I'm finna go get him. Dinkie appeared at his door just as the overseer was approaching. Dinkie wakes up, he comes out, Cook is walking towards his cabin. Boom, they finna have the interaction. Follow me to the barn, said the impatient driver to the Negro. I make it a point always to whip a nigger the first day that I take charge of a farm so as to let the hands know who I am. So Cook is saying, look, bro, every plantation I've been overseer over, the first day I find the most honorary Negro that I can find and I whoop him in front of everybody just to let everybody know I don't play no games. Dinkie, you won the prize. Follow me to the barn, and when we get in this barn, you know what it is. And now, Mr. Dinkie, they tell me, this is what the overseer is saying to Dinkie. And now, Mr. Dinkie, they tell me that you have not had your back tanned for many years. And that being the case, I shall give you a flogging that you will never forget. Follow me to the barn. Cook started for the barn, but turned and went into his house to get his whip. So he's like, yeah, they already told me ain't nobody whooped you in a long time. You think you're above getting whooped. I'm finna show you what the great Grove Cook does. At this juncture, Dinkie, when Cook walks off, he going towards the barn, he turns towards the house to get his whip. When he does that, at this juncture, Dinkie gave a knowing look to the other slaves who were standing by and said, if he lays the weight of his finger on me, you will see the top of that barn come out. Basically, he not gonna touch me. If he touched me with one finger, you will see the top of that barn come out. Now they know the top of the barn ain't coming out, but that's just like saying, he's not gonna do it. Yeah, like before you see him lay a hand on me, you will see pigs fly. That type of thing. So Dinkie, he knows. He not afraid. He not worried. He like, man, look, if that dude put his finger on me, you'll see the top of that barn come out. And you ain't going to see the top of that barn come out, so he ain't going to lay a finger on me. Cocky. The reappearance of the overseer with the large Negro whip in one hand and a club in the other with a significant demand of follow me caused a deep feeling in the breast of every Negro present. So now everybody like, ooh, we ain't seen Dinkie challenge in years. Nobody messes with Dinkie. Everybody is afraid of Dinkie. Everybody show Dinkie respect. Now Cook say finna whoop Dinkie. So everybody locked in now. The immortal, the invincible Dinkie is being challenged by the new overseer Cook. Clash of the Titans. What's gonna happen? Everybody's holding their breath. Dr. Gaines, the plantation owner, expecting a difficulty between his new driver and the Conjurer, had arisen early and was standing at his bedroom window looking on. Now imagine that. Dr. Gaines owns the plantation. He recalls the conversation the day before when he had to tell Cook, Dinkie is a gentleman at large. He do whatever he want to do, bro. And that dude was like, I'm going to make him work. Dr. Gaines like, okay, everybody that ever tried to make him work, it always ended up one way, but go for it. So Dr. Gaines, he get up early in the morning, probably got his robe on and his slippers, probably got a cup of coffee. Instead of coming outside to stand firm, he peeking through his bedroom window, probably upstairs. Hold on, man. Hold on. This popular form right here. This is the big house. Just imagine the plantation owner in that upstairs window. He peeking through the curtains. He's sipping his coffee like, hey, man, Cook say he gonna whoop Dinkie. Man, look, Dinkie, it's something about Dinkie. I don't even play with Dinkie no more. I want to see what happened. But he don't come out. But he don't come outside. Dinkie had this man shook. This man peeking through the window, sipping coffee in his robe and slippers. Just imagine standing in that upstairs window in his bedroom. But he owned Dinkie. That's crazy, man. It was something about Dinkie, man. That's real talk. Whatever it was something about him. So look, Dr. Gaines, expecting a difficulty between his new driver and the Conjurer, had arisen early and was standing at his bedroom window looking on, peeping. Who's that peeping in my window? Pow. Nobody now. Look, he say the news that Dinkie was to be whipped spread far and near over the place. Remember, a plantation is multiple acres. You have multiple slave quarters. So now everybody is going around. Hey, Dinkie finna get whipped. Dinkie finna get whipped. Cook is taking Dinkie to the barn. Cook taking Dinkie to the barn. They don't have the internet. They don't have TV. They don't have radio. They don't have books, right? So this is the most interesting thing that's going on right now. Dinkie getting taken to the barn, and they say that Dinkie, the man that everybody's afraid of, is about to be whipped. So you ain't got to worry. Nobody is, I'm on my tablet. Nobody on Facebook. Nobody on TikTok. Nobody watching their favorite show on TV. Nobody listening to the radio. Everybody locked in. Word spread fast. The news that Dinkie was to be whipped spread far and near over the place and had called forth men, women, and children. Even Uncle Ned, the old Negro of 90 years, had crawled out of his straw and was at his cabin door. What is straw? His bed was made out of straw. That's what they're describing. As the barn doors closed behind the overseer and Dinkie, a death-like silence pervaded the entire group, who, instead of going to their labor as ordered by the driver, were standing as if paralyzed, gazing intently at the barn. expecting every moment to see the roof lifted. They believe Dinkie got this. They know, and to them, Dinkie got power. So the driver says, "Hey, I'm finna go handle Dinkie and the barn. All you guys, y'all go to work." They go into the barn. They close the door behind them. Nobody goes to work. Everybody is huddled up. Everybody watching. Now, Uncle Ned, the 90-year-old, the old Negro of 90 years, they're going to tell us in a second, he shares a cabin with Dinkie. Most Negroes, it was multiple Negroes to a cabin. So Uncle Ned and Dinkie, they live in the same cabin. Even Uncle Ned, 90 years old, he doesn't work anymore because he's so old. He comes out and he's standing at the barn doors. He's standing at his cabin doors. He looking. And everybody like, damn, soon as the overseer hit Dinkie with the whip, the roof of the barn is going to come off. So check this out. Not a word was spoken by anyone except Uncle Ned, who smiled, shook his head, put on a knowing countenance, and said, "My word for it, the overseer ain't a going to whip Dinkie." So Uncle Ned, the 90-year-old, say, "Man, look, man, it ain't no way in hell Cook finna lay a hand on Dinkie. It ain't gonna happen. He don't believe it." So watch this. This is gonna make sense in a little bit, but just pay attention to the story. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed, and the usual sound of "Oh, pray, massa! Oh, pray, massa!" heard on the occasion of a slave being punished had not yet proceeded from the barn. So now it's up to 15 minutes of silence. Remember that time period: 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Normally, an individual, when they're getting whooped, they start begging for mercy. Obviously, you get the whip hurt. They don't hear the whip cracking. They don't hear Dinkie begging for mercy. They hear nothing. Many of the older Negroes gathered around Uncle Ned, for he and Dinkie occupied the same cabin. And the old, superannuated slave knew more about the affairs of the Conjurer than anyone else. Superannuated, that basically just means he's too old to work. He physically can't do it anymore. He's 90 years old. That's all that means. So Ned told of how on the previous night, so now, boom. So now Ned is finna tell everybody what Dinkie did the night before to prepare for this challenge with Cook. Remember, Cook already said the day before, tomorrow I'm going to make this Negro work. Dinkie, knowing this, is like, okay, so tomorrow he's going to try to make me work. I'm going to say no, like I always do. I'm going to sleep in. He's going to try to whip me. So Dinkie knows he has to get ready. Now we're finna get into the actual quote unquote conjuring that Dinkie did the night before. Now we're finna see Dinkie working with the devil. We had to build this up. And I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Sometimes we just have to read through the literature. We have to make this make sense. Look, Ned told of how on the previous night, Dinkie had slept but little. He had closely inspected the snake skin around his neck, the petrified frog and dried lizard in his pockets, and had rubbed himself all over with gopher. And when he had finished, he knelt and exclaimed, "Now, good and lovely devil," pause. Before we get into his prayer to the devil, look at what he does. That night, he doesn't sleep. Remember, he kept a snake skin around his neck, a petrified frog, and a dry lizard in his pocket. So that night, he does something with the snake skin. He does something with the petrified frog. He does something with the dried lizard. And he rubs himself all over with gopher. Let's stop right there before we get into his prayer. What the hell is goofer? Let me explain. Now, yes, this Wikipedia, some people don't like Wikipedia, but this is also described in the primary sources. This is good information that I'm giving you guys. Okay? Goofer dust is a traditional hexing material and practice of the Black American tradition of hoodoo from the southern United States. It has roots in traditional Congo religion. The word goofer in goofer dust has Congo origins and comes from the Kikongo word kufwa, which means to die. Among hoodoo practitioners, this derivation is very clear because goofer is not only used as an adjective modifying dust, but also a verb in he goofered that man, and a noun, she put a goofer on him. As late as the 1930s, goofering was a regional synonym for hoodooing. And in North Carolina, at least, the meaning of the term was broadened beyond spells of damage, illness, and death to include love spells cast with dominating intent. So goofer, depending on how it's used, it could be an adjective, it could be a verb, it could be a noun. But what it's talking about is using some type of mixture, some type of power to affect some type of result on a particular individual. Most of the time is used to like hurt or protect, inflict damage on someone or illness on someone. I want you guys to watch where I'm going with this. A euphemistic word for goofering is poisoning, which in this context does not refer to a physical poison, but to a physical agent that through magical means brings about an unnatural illness or the death of a victim. Now, pause. I want you to really think about this for a second. What they try to do, they try to make you think that everything pertaining to hoodoo is superstition, is magic, is mumbo jumbo nonsense. But when you look at the euphemistic word for goofering, is poisoning. Is it can people really be poisoned? Or are there certain flowers, or there certain roots, are there certain herbs, are there certain power-like substances that can cause illness and even death? Are there certain mushrooms that an individual can eat that'll kill them? Are there certain plants that an individual can ingest that'll kill them? Are there some plants that excrete a substance that if it gets on the human skin, it seeps into the human skin and it can cause illness and even death or make you lose limbs? Some animals, such as like toads, or there's some toads that excrete liquids out of their skin that will poison or kill a predator that tries to eat them or that touches them. Think about this for a second. They have to where, you ever seen on TV people making blow darts? To where they'll have like a long hollow tube, they'll put a dart in it, blow on one end, and it'll propel the dart out the other side, stab into an animal that they're hunting and kill the animal. What is it about that dart that kills them? Well, in a lot of instances, they may take like a toad, get this toad or just poisonous toad to excrete a like liquid substance out of its skin. They will rub the tip of the dart in it, and now it's a poisonous dart, right? So what I want you guys to really get, yes, someone can just take regular items that have no scientific properties associated with it that cause harm and mix it together and just try to, by some spiritual means, hurt someone or cause hallucinations, or cause a illness, or cause death. But if an individual really has a knowledge of the world around them, they can really go and be like, okay, that mushroom right there, that mushroom will kill you if it's injected. Oh, that plant, poison ivy, that plant right there, if I was to rub some of that stuff on you, you're going to get sick. You're going to get a rash. Your skin is going to fall off. If I dip this, if I take this particular animal, this poisonous animal that excretes this substance, and I put it on the tip of this needle, and I stab you with this needle, you're going to die if you don't get any type of medical help. Right? So everything about this is not supernatural, right? There are things in everything we create comes from nature. Every weapon, every medicine, every tool, every technology, we get something from nature and we shape it and form it in such a way that it meets our ultimate purpose, right? Look at where it says use. In practice, talking about goofering, it was often used to create illness in victims, such as swelling of the legs or blindness. Recipes for making it vary, but primarily include graveyard dirt or snake skin. We know that a lot of snakes are very poisonous and venomous. Other ingredients may include ash, powdered sulfur, salt, powdered bones, powdered insect chitin, dried manure, herbs, spices, and anvil dust. The fine black iron detritus found around a blacksmith's anvil. Gopher dust is a combination of dirt from a graveyard, gunpowder, and grease from them bells. Okay? So when the individual is talking about gopher or goofering or to goofer somebody, depending on what they're using, it may not just be magic. The combination of roots, herbs, dust, dirt, powder, plant, animal skin that an individual uses in the goofering can have a real world effect. It can make you, or even it can even make you like hallucinate. I want you guys to think about that. They're like ayahuasca. Everybody heard of that. It's like they use plants to make like a drink. You drink that ayahuasca or you smoke a certain thing and it causes your mind to go into a whole nother realm. You see visions. People's skin start melting. There is a real scientific realm to this, but you have to have an in-depth knowledge of the physical world around you, the plants, the animals, the herbs, the etc. Right? So we don't know, because it's not explicitly mentioned. We don't know what roots and herbs and all of that Dinkie had in his slave cabin. We do know that he kept a snake skin around his neck. He had a dried out lizard in his pocket. He had a dried out frog or toad in his pocket. And we know for a fact that there are certain toads, snakes, and lizards that can excrete harmful substances, and especially when mixed with other substances. So that's just something I want you guys to think about. It's not all hocus pocus. You're wrong if that's what you believe. So let's get back to the narrative. Look, Ned told how on the previous night Dinkie had slept but little, had closely inspected the snake skin around his neck, the petrified frog and dried lizard in his pocket, and had rubbed himself all over with gopher. And when he had finished, he knelt and exclaimed. So whatever concoction he created, he rubbed it on himself. Was that just to stealthily take it into the barn with him to where he could remove it from himself and apply this substance to cook once they were in the barn? Think about it. And affect him. Let's see what happens. So after he does this the previous night, what does he say? What does he pray? This him talking. Now this we finna see him talking directly to the devil. And as always, I want you to draw your own conclusion from this, but he's gonna tell you why he's praying to the devil. Now, I don't want you to think literally about the devil as we know the devil, like Dinkie's trying to be evil. He's going to tell you what he's thinking. But remember, in hoodoo, there's a spirit realm, there's good spirits, there's bad spirits, right? There's spirits that you can call on to do good, there's spirits that you can call on to do evil. So if I want to do something to a plantation owner or to somebody that has me enslaved, obviously I want to work with a spirit that can hurt them, that's willing to hurt them because they want to hurt me. Let's look at what he says. Now, hey, good morning, Sandra. Ask you, good to see you. Look what he says. Now, good and lovely devil, don't be afraid. Don't log off. Just listen to the story. For more than 20 years, I have served you faithfully. Before I got into your service, the white folks bought and sold me and my old wife and children and whipped me and half starved me. They did treat me mighty bad, that you knows. Then I used to pray to the Lord, but that did no good because the white folks don't fear the Lord. But they fears you. And ever since I got into your service, I is able to do as I please. No white dares to lay his hand on me. And this is all owing to the power that you give me. So what is he trying to say? He's saying when he learned these terms about the Lord and the devil, and he was sold off, he was beat, he was starved, his wife was taken from him, his wife was sold off to another plantation, his children were taken from him, his children were sold off to another plantation. And when all of this was going on, he prayed, Lord, don't let them whip me. They whipped him anyway. Lord, don't let them take my wife. They took his wife anyway. Lord, don't let them take my children. They took his children anyway. He probably begged them, oh, in the name of the Lord, please don't do these things to me. They did it anyway. And in his mind, to him, he was like, this don't do no good because they're not afraid of the Lord. They're not afraid of the Lord. They pray to the Lord, and even they believe that the Lord, as they know, the Lord intended for black people to be slaves. So there is no prayer to the Lord to get out of slavery. So he was like, okay, well, I need to deal with whatever spirit you're afraid of because I'm tired of y'all abusing me. I need to deal with whoever y'all afraid of, not with who you're not afraid of. He goes on to say, oh, good and lovely devil. This man praying directly to the devil. I want y'all to look at this. Please to continue that power. A new overseer is to come here tomorrow, and he wants to get me in his hands. But, dear devil, I ask you to stand by me in this my trial hour, and I will never desert you as long as I live. Continue this power. Make me strong in your cause. Make me to be more faithful to you, and let me still be able to conjure my enemies. And I will give you all the glory and will try to deserve a seat at your right hand. With bated breath, everyone listened to Uncle Ned. All had the utmost confidence in Dinkie's power. None believed that he would be punished, while a large number expected to see the roof of the barn burst off at any moment. At last, the suspense was broken. The barn door flew open. The overseer and the conjurer came out together, walking side by side, and separated when halfway up the walk. As they parted, Cook went to the field and Dinkie to his cabin. So whatever happened in there, Dinkie didn't get whooped. Let's keep reading. We're going to get the explanation. The slaves all shook their heads significantly. The fact that the old Negro had received no punishment was evidence of his victory over the slave driver. But how the feat had been accomplished was a mystery. No one dared to ask Dinkie, for he was always silent, except when he had something to communicate. Everyone was afraid to inquire of the overseer. There was, however, one faint chance of getting an inkling of what had occurred in the barn, and that was through Uncle Ned. This fact made the old, super-annotated slave the hero and center of attraction for several days. Many were the applications made to Ned for information, but the old man did not know or wish to exaggerate the importance of what he had learned. So everyone is afraid to ask the overseer, why didn't he whip Dinkie? Everyone is afraid to ask Dinkie, why didn't the overseer whip him? What happened inside of the barn? So everybody is like, hey, Uncle Ned, you share a cabin with Dinkie. You know about the conjuring that Dinkie did the night before. You know about his prayer to the devil the night before. You need to find out from Dinkie what happened in the barn and tell us, because everybody wanted to know. So everybody is talking about what happened. Everybody wants to know the explanation. I tell you, said Dolly, Dinkie is a power. He's nobody's fool, responded Hannah. I would not make him mad with me for this whole world, ejaculated Jim. So the whole plantation is talking about Dinkie at this point, the old conjurer. Just then, Nancy, the cook, came in brimful of news. She had given Uncle Ned some crackling bread, which had pleased the old man so much that he had opened his bosom and told her all that he got from Dinkie. So Nancy is what we call a house slave. She's the cook. She is in the house. She prepares the meals. She has access to the kitchen, to the food. She's, the house servant. We all know what the house servant is. So a lot of times these house servants would curry favor with certain field slaves because they were able to get things like food. Food was a high commodity to our ancestors who weren't enslaved. So Nancy, having access to the kitchen, she was able to sneak a little bit of what she called crackling bread, some type of special bread that had been made. She was able to steal some of that from the kitchen, and she was able to give it to Uncle Ned and be like, hey, here, Uncle Ned, I'm gonna give you some of this special crackling bread if you just tell me the gossip. Here you go, Uncle Ned, 90 years old. Just tell me what happened with Dinkie in the barn. So Uncle Ned, he get the crackling bread. He like, okay, for the crackling bread, I'll tell you what I know. He get the crackling bread, the old ancestor, 90 years old. He sit down, old, frail, speaking slowly. We know how 90-year-olds are. He tells Nancy what happened in the barn. Nancy finds out, so now she comes to the other slaves. She has the information. Now she is the most important person. She's the most important person around because she has the quote-unquote tea, as we say now. So everybody here, Nancy knows what happened. Nancy knows what happened. Nancy knows what happened. Everybody wants to go to Nancy to get the tea. This piece of information flew quickly from cabin to cabin, slave cabin to slave cabin, and brought the slaves hastily into the kitchen. So they all of the slaves, maybe not everybody on the plantation, but you get the gist of it. All of the slaves, they come out of their cabins, they go into the kitchen with Nancy so they can, gather around, children. Nancy will tell you all what happened in the barn because this is all the plantation can talk about. Right? It was nighttime. So I imagine maybe it's late night. Dr. Gaines is going to sleep. They sneak into the house. They sneak into the kitchen. And remember, Poplar Farm is pretty big. 2-story, huge place. So technically the master could have been asleep on one side. The kitchen could have been on another side. Nancy let them all in, right? And so now they are about to find out what happened with Dinkie, and subsequently we're going to find out what happened with Dinkie. William Wells Brown is there. Primary information, family. Look, Nancy sat down, looked around, and told Billy to shut the door. This heightened the interest so that the fall of a pin could have been heard. All eyes were upon Nancy, and she felt keenly the importance of her position. She knows she got the good tea. She knows she got the good tea. Her voice was generally loud, with a sharp ring, which could be heard for a long distance, especially in the stillness of the night. But now, Nancy spoke in a whisper, occasionally putting her finger to her mouth, indicating a desire for silence, even when the breathing of those present could be distinctly heard. Now, for one, she wants them to be as quiet as possible so she can tell her story, but because she can't be loud, remember, this is at night, Dr. Gaines is off sleep somewhere, they have snuck into the house, they're not all supposed to be in the kitchen like this. That's a punishable offense, first off. So she keep telling them, no, y'all hush, y'all be quiet, hold it down, don't breathe too loud, don't murmur, gather around little children, I'm going to tell you what happened. So this is what Nancy says she learned from Uncle Ned. When they got in the barn, Dinkie and the overseer Cook, when they got in the barn, the overseer said to Dinkie, strip yourself. I don't want to tear your clothes with my whip. I'm going to tear your black skin. Then, you see, Dinkie told the overseer to look in the east corner of the barn. He looked and he saw hell with all the torments and the devil with his cloven foot strutting about there, just as if he was cock of the walk. And Dinkie told Cook that if he lay his finger on him, he'd call the devil up to take him away. And what did Cook say to that? Asked Jim. Let me alone. I didn't tell you all, said Nancy. Like, don't ask no questions, just let me tell my damn story. Then you see the overseer turn pale in the face, and he say to Dinkie, let me go this time, and I'll never trouble you no more. This concluded Nancy's story as related to her by old Ned and religiously believed by all present. Stop. I want you guys to think about something. So when Uncle Ned told the story, look at what he says happened. They walk into the barn. The overseer tells Dinkie, take off your shirt. I don't want to tear up your clothes. I want to hit straight back. When he tells Dinkie that, Dinkie tells the overseer, hey, before you do that, look off into the east corner of the barn. The east corner of the barn. The east corner of the barn. And when the overseer looked, he saw hell with all its torments and the devil strutting around. And Dinkie told Cook, the overseer, that if he lay a finger on him, he going to call the devil up and the devil going to take him away. Now, remember what I told you guys a second ago. I told you guys to remember the time period that they were in the barn, because that sounded like it happened pretty quick. Remember, he says 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed, and the usual sound of "Oh, pray master, heard on the occasion of a slave being punished had not yet proceeded from the barn. So they were in there for over 15 minutes. It doesn't take, listen to me good, it doesn't take 15 minutes for somebody to say, strip yourself, I'm going to tear your black skin, and for somebody else to say, hey, look in the east corner. You look in the east corner and you see a vision of hell with all its torments and the devil. So what could be missing from the story? Remember what I told you about goofering. Now, we as intelligent thinking individuals, let's examine the story. Is there something that Dinkie could have smuggled into the barn that caused the overseer to have a hallucination, like something real? Did it have to be magic? Remember, Dinkie, he looked at his snake skin, he looked at the toad, he looked at the dried lizard, he covered himself in gopher, meaning He made some type of concoction and he put it on his body. Now, remember what I told you guys about goofering. Was that concoction something that if, it put a powder in the air that if the overseer inhaled it, it could cause hallucinations? Remember, they're in there for over 15 minutes. That's a long time. They're in there for over 15 minutes. And obviously the overseer had some type of hallucination. He saw hell, torments. He saw the devil. What type of powder did Dinkie take in there that caused this man's mind to see hell and the was it like pure magic? Or is there some type of scientific explanation behind it? I want you guys to do something on your own time. If you look up, just look up like toads and stuff. Just look it up. Look up plants and herbs. Look it up and see if there's certain things that can cause hallucination. I know for a fact in North America, you have certain toads that if you get a certain part of the toad, make it into a certain type of concoction, it can definitely cause a hallucination. Right? And I'm of the opinion that that's what Dinkie did. Some type of way, Dinkie introduced the overseer to some type of concoction, be it powder, some type of liquid that maybe he touched him, it was absorbed through the skin. Something happened that affected the overseer's mind. And when Dinkie started talking about how he gonna call up the devil to take him away, that caused the overseer's mind to see what the overseer saw. Because there has to be some type of explanation. And so when the overseer sees that, he's not knowing in his mind, oh, Dinkie just got this magical power. Let me leave Dinkie alone. And then, after he goes through his phase, maybe with the doses that Dinkie gave him, it took 15, 20 minutes for him to, go through the stages, sweat it out, and then come back to his senses. He don't see it no more. And he like, oh, man, I'm not going to bother Dinkie no more. And then they come out the barn, and he like, hey, man, look, I ain't going to never mess with Dinkie no more. And perhaps Dinkie has been known, he knew this science, used it time and time again, and just the legend of Dinkie spread far and wide, and people's like, nah, it's something about him. Because remember earlier in the story, he a slave trader came and bought Dinkie, had him for a day, and then he brought him back and was like, hey man, I ought to sue you for selling me this dude. What did Dinkie do? I think it has something to do with that snake skin, that frog, and that lizard that he have on him. And some powders and whatnot that he has as well, but who knows what type of toad that was. What type of properties the skin of that toad had. Right? But look, let's go a little further. That's not all we know about Dinkie. But that's powerful. Now look, whatever caused the overseer to change his mind in regard to the flogging of Dinkie, it was certain that he was most thoroughly satisfied to let the old Negro off without the threatened punishment. And although he remained at popular form as overseer, for 5 years, he never interfered with the Conjurer again. So he was there for 5 years. And he never bothered Dinkie again. Right? Ralph HD Boy says this is a good one here. Hey, appreciate it, fam. Appreciate it, fam. I like to try to bring y'all, some hard-hitting stuff, man. Some hard-hitting stuff from the mouths of our ancestors themselves. I'm glad you liking it, fam. Hotel. So he says for 5 years, they never messed with Dinkie again. And look, it is not strange. Now, this is where the ancestor kind of frustrate me, but it is what it is. It is not strange that ignorant people should believe in characters of Dinkie's stamp, but it is really marvelous that well-educated men and women should give any countenance whatever to such delusions as were practiced by the oracle of popular form. The following illustration may be taken as a fair sample of the easy manner in which Dinkie carried on his trade. So obviously, William Wells Brown, as he got older and he was writing this, he didn't believe in hoodoo and conjuring. It was superstition to him, regardless of what he saw on popular form. But what he's saying is, it makes sense that the ignorant Negroes could be fooled by somebody like Dinkie. But what stood out to him and what was marvelous was that educated men and women would believe in Dinkie as well. And what he's saying is even white people believed in the powers that Dinkie had. And you see that quite often. See, they always going to tell, I want to show you guys something. They're always going to tell you and try to tell you that, oh, hoodoo and conjure is superstition, is hocus pocus, is not real, is make-believe. The Negroes were just uneducated, so they believed in it. But hold on. Wait a minute. Even while our ancestors were enslaved, there were white people who believed it too. Let me say that again. There were white people who believed it too. Now watch this next story I'm going to show you. Dinkie is a slave. And I'm going to show you white people going to Dinkie because they are fully convinced in the power that Dinkie has. Miss Martha Lemmy, being on a visit to Mr. Gaines, took occasion during the day to call upon Dinkie. So Miss Martha Lemmy, a white woman, is at she's on a visit to Mrs. Gaines. She obviously is friends with the wife of Dr. Gaines. So she goes to a friend's house. They're probably having tea, talking about the latest gossip, yada, yada, yada. So while she's there, she knows about Dinkie. The legend of Dinkie is far and wide. So while she's there, she's like, let me take this occasion. Let me go get, this is wild. Let me go get a reading from Dinkie. You think palm reading just started? No, 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 no. She says, let me go get a reading from Dinkie. The conjurer knew the antecedents of his visitor, basically trying to say that he knew why she was coming to him. The conjurer knew the antecedents of his visitor and was ready to give complete satisfaction in this particular line. When the young lady entered the old man's cabin, he met her, bade her be welcome, and tell what she had come for. Pay attention to what we're describing. She doesn't call Dinkie to the big house. This is a well-to-do white woman. This well-to-do white woman visits the popular farm, the popular plantation, to talk to her friend, Mrs. Gaines, the wife of a doctor. Then she leaves the big house and she goes to the quote-unquote old man's cabin. She goes to the slave cabin, family. This young white lady goes to a slave's cabin. Pay attention. So when she comes to the cabin, just imagine like she came to him. So already off the top, we see who is the most powerful person in this particular encounter. She's coming to him for something. He's not going to her. What did she hear? What did she know? What are the stories? So see, this is not just William Wells Brown talking about Dinkie. This is not just the Negroes talking about Dinkie. White people are talking about Dinkie. White people are believing in Dinkie so much that this young white lady is willing to go to the slave quarters to talk to such a powerful man. And so when she comes, the great Dinkie, hey, welcome, Miss Martha Lemon. What can I do for you? She's going to the oracle. She's going to the prophet. She's going to the mystic, right? She's going to the man with the power. She's going to the wise man on the mountain. You feel me? She's going to the wise man on the mountain, fam. Don't read the story, see the story. She took a seat on one stool and he on the other. So my boy got some furniture. Shout out to Dinkie, man. My boy got some furniture in there. So she sit on one stool, he sit on the other. So now she inside of this quote unquote dirty, dingy slave quarters with a slave that she respects enough to do this. Now check this out. Now listen to this story, man. Taking the lady's right hand in his. Now he's touching on a white woman. You feel me? He's touching on this white woman in the slave quarter, bro. This is you could be killed for that. You could be hung. You could be lynched. You could be beat for looking the white woman in her eyes, bro. You understand what I'm saying? Think about Emmett Till whistled at a white woman and died after slavery. So this is during slavery. Not only is she in his slave quarters, he touching her hand, physical contact. Now look, taking the lady's right hand in his, Dinkie spit into its palm, rubbed it, looked at it, shut his one eye. Remember, he only has one eye, probably lost another eye getting beat before he started praying to the devil. Shut his one eye, opened it, and said, stop, stop, stop. Somebody caught it, somebody missed it. Taking the lady's right hand, listen to me good. Taking the lady's right hand in his, Dinkie spit into its palm. Man, hold up. Wait a minute. Stop the presses. So this young white lady go to the slave quarters. She sits down with Dinkie. Dinkie grab her right hand gently. He gently grab her right hand and he spit in it, bro. He spit in it. Come on, man. Come on, man. Why is she letting this dude spit in her hand, bro? You know, and I'm not laughing because it is make-believe. I'm laughing because you really have to see the level of confidence or belief that she has in Dinkie. She don't let this dude spit in her hand, bro. She not letting nobody just spit in her hand. You feel me? He spit in her hand, bro, right in her palm. Then he rubbed it. He rubbed the saliva. He rubbed the spit in. Then he looked at the spit. He shut his one. He only got one eye. He shut his eye. He opened it. You know, he's peering through the veil. And he says, I sees a young gentleman, and he's rich, and owns plenty of land and a whole heap of niggas. And lo, Miss Martha, he loves you. So now he's reading her poem, in which he was known to be able to, remember I told you earlier, to see through the veil. There is only the present, the past, the future. It's only now. The time is an illusion. So Dinkie he's an oracle. He's a prophet. He's one that can see the past, see the future, see he can see. He has the power to do various things. This is another one of his powers. And obviously she's not the only person he did this to, because when Miss Martha came, she was like, hey, you know what? While I'm here, let me go see Dinkie. Everybody talk about Dinkie. So obviously some of the stuff that Dinkie has already told other people have come true. Because if everything he said never came true, she wouldn't let him spit in her hand. This is how you know he is credible. He spit in the white woman's hand and she let him. God damn, what more do you need to see? She believed in it. The lady drew a long breath of seeming satisfaction and asked, are you sure that he loves me, Uncle Dinkie? Now call the man Uncle Dinkie. You know, nowadays everybody is Unc and Auntie. Like I'm 42, gonna be 43 this year. Everybody call me Unc. Like all the youngsters, Unc. Yeah, y'all didn't start that. We ain't just start being Unc this, Unc that, Auntie. That's been going on. So he said, are you sure he loves me, Uncle Dinkie? This white woman calling his slave Uncle Dinkie. Get the hell out of here. This man's something else. Oh, Miss Martha, I knows it like a book. Have you ever seen the gentleman? The lady inquired. So Dinkie is saying that in her palm, he's seen not just her future, but he's seeing beyond physical sight. And he's saying that, oh, because she's coming to him for information about her future, obviously, information about her life, obviously. And he's saying within the spit on her palm of her hand, he sees a young gentleman. The young gentleman is rich. He has a lot of land and he has a lot of slaves. Then he says that Miss Martha, this guy that I see, he loves you. And so Miss Martha said, are you sure that he loved me, Uncle Dinkie? And he was like, I knows it like a book. That's what I see. And so she says, have you ever seen this gentleman? The lady inquired. So she wants to know, who is this man that loves me? Because obviously she wants to get married. She want to have kids. She's a single lady at this point. She's, looking for love. The conjurer began rubbing the palm of the snow white hand. He rubbing the hand of the snow bunny. Talked to himself in an undertone, smiled, then laughed out and saying, why, Miss Martha, as I lives, is Mr. Scott. And he's thinking about you now. Yes, he's got his mind on you this breast minute. So now we have a name to the figure that he's seeing, a man named Mr. Scott. But how he's changed since I seen him the last time. So he's saying that he's actually getting a vision of Mr. Scott in real time. Now he's got side whiskers and a mustache on his chin. But let me see. Here is something strange. The web looks a little smoky. And when I gets to that spot, I can't get along till a little silver is given to me. So now what Dinkie is saying is like, look, okay, I'm telling you what I'm seeing so far. I'm telling you who I'm seeing. Now, yes, Dinkie could see more, but hey, dude, he gotta make a living. We ain't mad enough for making a living. He's saying basically like, hey, give me a little silver, I'll tell you more. And a lot of times that's how conjurers would work off of like donations and whatnot. A lot of times they didn't have set prices, but they were like, give me what you can and I'll do what I can for you. So here the lady drew forth her purse and gave the old man a $50 piece that made his one eye fairly twinkle. He resumed, now the fog is cleared away, and I see that Mr. Scott is sitting in a rocking chair with both feet on the table and smoking a cigar. Do you think Mr. Scott loves me? Inquired the lady. Now she already asked that. He already told her twice, but obviously, she's looking for love. Oh, yes, responded Dinkie. He just sets his whole heart on you. Indeed, Miss Martha, he's almost dying about you. He never told me that he loved me, remarked the lady. But then, you see, he's backward. He ain't got his eye teeth cut yet in love matters. But he'll get a little bolder every time he sees you, replied the Negro. So, basically she's like, well, he never said he loved me. Are you sure he really loved me? So she knows who Mr. Scott is. And apparently she has to like Mr. Scott. She wants Mr. Scott to like her back. And so she's trying to see, is this really real? Is he really going to try to marry me? Because, I don't want to I don't want to keep running behind Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott don't even love me. And he's not going to make me an honest woman by marrying me. Do you think he'll ever ask to marry him? She asked Dinkie, is Mr. Scott going to ask me to marry him? Oh, yes, Miss Martha. He's sure to do that. As he sits there in his rocking chair, he looks mighty solemnly. Looks like he wanted to ask you to have him now. Do you think that Mr. Scott likes any other lady, Uncle Dinkie? Asked Miss Lemmy. Miss Lemmy is Martha Lemmy. Well, Miss Martha, I'll just consult the well and see. And here the conjurer shut his one eye, opened it, shut it again, talked to himself in an undertone, opened his eye, looked into the lady's hand and exclaimed, Miss Martha, I see a lady in the way, and she's got riches, but the web is smoky, and it needs a little silver to clear it up. So now Dinkie is saying, well, you're asking more and more questions. You want more information. So, hey, drop something in the pot. Let me get a donation. With tears in her eyes and almost breathless, Miss Lemmy hastily took from her pocket her purse and handed the old man another piece of money, saying, please go on. Now, why she is almost in tears is because she asks, does Mr. Scott like any other lady? And so Dinkie is saying, well, I'm looking through the web. It's kind of cloudy, but I do see another lady, a rich lady somewhere, but it's a little smoky. I need to clear it up, but I do see some lady there. Not sure who she is. So Dinkie smiled, shook his head, got up and shut his cabin door, sat down, and again took the lady's hand in his. Yes, I see, he said. I see it's a lady. But bless your soul, Miss Martha, it's a likeness of you that Mr. Scott is looking at. That's all. This morsel of news gave great relief, and Miss Lemmy dried her eyes with joy. So, yes, he saw something, but what he saw was actually Mr. Scott thinking about Miss Martha. So he's saying that he kind of like saw into the mind of Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott was thinking about a woman. He didn't know who the woman was, but as it cleared up, the woman was Miss Martha. Miss Martha, she has nothing to worry about. Dinkie then took down the old rusty horseshoe from over his cabin door, held it up and said, this horseshoe never lies. Here, he took out of his pocket a bag made of the skin of the rattlesnake and took from it some gopher, sprinkled it over the horseshoe, saying, this is the stuff, Miss Martha, that's going to make you Mr. Scott's conqueror. Long as you keep this gopher about you, he can't get away from you. He'll ask you for a kiss the very next time he meets you, and he can't keep himself from doing it. So he takes out a bag made of rattlesnake skin, and he has some gopher in it, some more gopher, another concoction, and he sprinkles it on the horseshoe, and this is supposed to help Miss Martha conquer the heart of Miss Scott. Now, the fact that he used the term conquer, it makes me think of John the Conqueror root, which I'll go into another video, but there's a specific root that's called John the Conqueror that our ancestors used in hoodoo. Now, because he said that it's going to make her conquer the heart of Mr. Scott, I'm thinking that is an allusion to John the Conqueror root. But I'm not 100% sure, and I'll do a video on John the Conqueror another day. But let's continue. We're almost finished, family. Just hold on a little bit longer. So he says, no woman can get him from you so long as you keep this gopher about you. Here, Dinkie lighted a tallow candle, looked at it, smiled, shook his head. You's going to marry Mr. Scott in about 1 year, and you's going to have 13 children, 7 boys and 6 gals, and you's going to have a heap of riches. Tells her future. Just then, Dinkie's interesting revelations were cut short by Ike and Cato bringing along Peter, who it was said had been killed by the old Bell sheep. Now we're going to get into one last aspect of the powers that Dinkie had before ancestor William Wells Brown ceases to speak about Dinkie. So Ike and Cato are slaves on the plantation with William Wells Brown. Earlier in the story, he tells us that Cato had learned some of the trades of a doctor from Dr. Gaines. It's a whole story in there about him trying to bleed people, him acting like he was a dentist, pulling teeth, etc., etc. And now Peter also is a slave on the Poplar Farm plantation. So while Dinkie is reading the future and reading the palm of Miss Martha, Ike and Kato come running in carrying Peter, and they're saying that Peter has been killed by the old Baal sheep. And we're going to get into what that means. So now they're supposedly bringing a dead body to Dinkie, and they want Dinkie to bring the dead boy Peter back to life, because they were saying that he had been killed by a sheep. Now, whether he was killed or knocked unconscious, that's really up for debate. But the fact that they thought he had been killed and they brought him to Dinkie shows what they believe Dinkie was capable of. Right? So we're just going to read the story, and as always, draw your own conclusion. So what happened to Peter? Why did they think Peter had been killed by the old Baal sheep, and what did Dinkie do about it? It appears, the ancestor, William Wells Brown says, it appears that Peter had a way of playing with the old ram. So now we know they call him the old Baal sheep, but this is a ram that they're really talking about, who was always ready to butt at anyone who got in his way. When seeing the ram coming, Peter would get down on his hands and knees and pretend that he was going to have a butting match with the sheep. So there was a particular sheep, a particular ram that would always try to ram and headbutt anybody that got in his way. We've all seen the videos. They like to ram and headbutt each other. It's just what that particular animal does. So Peter is a youngster, and so what he would do to play, he would get down on his hands and knees like he was going to headbutt the sheep or headbutt the ram, right? This is what he would always do. And he says, and when the latter would come full tilt at him, the sheep, the ram, would come at Peter. Peter would dodge his head so as to miss the ram, and the latter would jump over the boy, turn around angrily, shake his head, and start for another butt at Peter. So Peter would get down on his hands and knees. He would antagonize the ram. The ram would barrel at him like he's they're about to headbutt each other. And then at the last minute, Peter would whoop. He would dodge his head out the way. The ram would miss him. The ram would jump over him, go past him, turn around, and try to ram him again. This kind of play was repeated sometimes for an hour or more. So Peter would do this over and over and over again, to the great amusement of both whites and blacks. Remember, there's no TV, no radio, no internet, none of that nonsense. No, they don't have the slaves don't have board games. So this is what they would do to entertain themselves, sometimes on popular form. And Peter would do this with the ram for an hour or more sometimes. And everybody would just laugh, and have a good old time. But on this occasion, Peter was completely caught. As he was on his hands and knees, the ram started on his usual run for the boy. The latter, in dodging his head, run his face against a stout stub of dry rye stalk, which caused him to quickly jerk up his head just in time for the sheep to give him a fair butt squarely in the forehead, which knocked Peter senseless. So Peter was on his hands and knees. The ram starts charging. He drops his head. When he drops his head, he just so happened to be kneeling over a stout stub of dry rye stalk. Something hard, small, protruding out of the ground. He hit it with his forehead because he brings his head down towards the ground to dodge the ram. When he hits his forehead on the stub of dry rye stalk, he jerks his head back up. As soon as he jerks his head back up, the ram is right there, and he hit him right on the forehead. Boom! Hit him as hard as he can, and it knocked Peter senseless. Peter fall. Boom. The ram, elated with his victory, began to back himself for another lick at Peter. So the ram knocks him out, like, I finally got you. He starts bagging up again. He's about to charge again. they say when the men, seeing what had happened to the poor boy, took him up and brought him to Dinkie's cabin to be resuscitated or brought to, as they termed it. So when they see Peter get hit, the sheep is about to attack again. They're like, oh man, they run over there, they grab up Peter, and then they rush to Dinkie's cabin. They're like, oh man, Peter needs help. It's only one person that can help him. So they say nearly an hour passed in rubbing the boy before he began to show signs of consciousness. He come to, but he never again accepted a budding match with the ram. Now, right there, when they say that nearly an hour passed in rubbing the boy, Dinkie, it doesn't say this, but I'm gonna explain it to you. Dinkie wasn't just rubbing the boy with his hands. I've seen instances of this in other literature that I've read from our ancestors. What he did was he made some type of, maybe like a salve or some type of medicine, and he was rubbing that medicine on the boy. He was rubbing something on him, kind of like if you know the individual was having trouble breathing or something like that, and they may rub like Vicks Vapor Rub on the chest to kind of open up the nasal passage so they can breathe better. Not saying that he was rubbing something akin to Vicks Vapor Rub, but I'm saying when he says that he passed the hour rubbing the boy, that's talking about hoodoo as well. He had some type of medicine, some type of mixture that was supposed to bring Peter back. You know, now I'm not saying Peter died and Dinkie brought him back from the dead. Peter could have just been knocked out, right? But I'm describing Dinkie rubbed medicine on him. He rubbed medicine on him. Now, this medicine could have had some type of properties in it to help him regain consciousness. You know how they have things like smelling salts. They put it under an individual's nose, and they bring them back. So we're not 100% sure of the concoction that Dinkie used, but I'm relatively certain that he wasn't rubbing bare hand to bare skin. He used some type of medicine that he had in his cabin, and that's what he was rubbing on the boy, trying to bring the boy back to consciousness, bring him back, have him wake up, which again shows us that Dinkie had several potions and elixirs in his cabin. Remember, he made some type of goofer when he was dealing with the overseer. He had goofer in a rattlesnake bag that was like a love potion when Miss Martha came to him. And now when they bring Peter in, he obviously went to another particular medicinal concoction that he used for Peter. And most hoodoo practitioners, they had several potions for several different things. And again, all of these potions and elixirs, they weren't some of them were superstition, but they weren't all superstitious and magical and mumbo jumbo, right? They were real herbs, plants, animals that had authentic, scientifically proven medicinal purposes. They were like doctors, okay? And that is what they used a lot of times. So we know that Dinkie, obviously he had multiple different concoctions inside of his cabin. And they went to Dinkie for several things, because as soon as this happened to Dinkie, as soon as this happened to Peter, rather, they immediately went to Dinkie as if this is what they did. So at that point, that was the conclusion of that chapter of the book My Southern Home by William Wells Brown. And he goes on to talk about different things that happened on the plantation. It's actually a great book. It's a great read. It gives you a lot of insight into what plantation life was really like from the perspective of our ancestors. But that is kind of where it concludes the talks about the ancestor Dinkie. But he gave us so much that we can get a real good grasp of ancestor Dinkie. But before we finish, I want to go back to what he said at first, because this is something that we really have. I really want you guys to take away from this. He says nearly every large plantation with any considerable number of Negroes had at least one, in some cases more, had at least one who laid claim to be a fortune teller and who was regarded with more than common respect by his fellows. Then he goes to tell us about Dinkie, who was on the Poplar Farm. So when we're talking about Dinkie, Dinkie is a name that we know, but there are so many others just like Dinkie on other plantations in the South. He says nearly every large plantation had a Dinkie. So Dinkie was special, yes, but there were more Dinkies on other plantations. Even the great Frederick Douglass, he was about to get a whooping at one point when he was still a slave. Before he escaped, he ran into the woods. He hid out for a while, and before he went back, he went to go see an old conjurer named Sally, who was the quote unquote Dinkie of his area, you know. And so Dinkie was he wasn't necessarily unique. So this was a reading from the great ancestor Williams Wells Brown. He wrote several books. In all of these books, we get great information. Again, his work, his narrative of his life as a slave, not the book that we read. We read My Southern Home. But his book, Narrative of William Wells Brown, was a bestseller, second only to the great Frederick Douglass. That's an amazing achievement. And he left us plenty of works. So I implore you guys. I appreciate you guys watching my videos and whatnot, but let's get to the point in your own time. Let's get to the point to where we no longer accept what other people tell us about slavery, because there are so many books written by our ancestors who were enslaved. They tell us what slavery was like. They tell us about the characters. They tell us about the jobs. They tell us about the overseers. They tell it from their own perspective. So let me stop sharing my screen. I don't want to belabor the point. So again, this has been a powerful conjurer named Dinkie who received power from the devil. I hope you guys heard something that you never heard before. If you did hear something that you heard before, I hope I was able to add more information and more clarity to the subject. And again, this is just another episode of letting our ancestors speak. We're going to continue to let our ancestors speak. We're going to continue to dive into the works of our ancestors, and we're going to continue to unpack this. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm going to thank you guys for supporting. This your brother, Matthew Daniels, a.k.a. I'm Pooh, a.k.a. The Chosen Few, a.k.a. The Real Bookworm. But I'm not just a bookworm, world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. One love, Hotel. I hope you guys have a great day.